Hello, everybody. Welcome to Friday's ESPN FC Live. Mark Donaldson alongside Janusz Mihalik and Ryan O'Hanlon. Janusz, football every day this week. This must just be perfection for you. How many games did you watch, do you reckon?
I don't know. You always start with that. Yeah, this is just let's get ready for the weekend now, because that's I see here we got to talk about who's going to win the Premier League and who moved up, who's come down, who's going to make the Champions League, who's going to drop down, and so stick with us, because of course we know it, and make sure you put a bet on it.
Yeah, Ryan O'Hanlon, how much snow have you had to shovel in Los Angeles this week?
It's been unbearable. My arms are so tired.
Cali. I'm going back to Cali. Who sings
right,
that?
And it's not the Janusz Mihalik half hour, but I'm sure you'll take a big chunk of it. We're going to start with Ryan and his colleague from ESPN, Bill Connolly. Now, every month they do the ESPN FC Premier League table re-ranked. So basically the form teams rather than the actual points. So Janusz and Ryan and myself are going to take a look at some of the decisions that have been made. We're going to split it up into three sections: the title race, the race for the top four, and to try and avoid the drop. We're going to start with the title race before we get to the ridiculous positioning of Everton. That's still to come. So who have you got as your top three in that order, Ryan, and why?
Number one, probably to the surprise of very few people, is Manchester City. Arsenal, number two, and Liverpool, number three. I think, City are the betting favorites. They're now in position where if they average the most points per game in the Premier League from here on out, they'll win the league. And then between Arsenal and Liverpool, we did just see Arsenal totally dominate Liverpool 2 weeks ago. So I think that gave them the tiebreaker in mine and Bill's mind.
Okay, Janusz, do you think those three teams are far and away clear of everybody else in the table? Is it the top three and one more Champions League spot up for grabs, or can you foresee any of those three perhaps being dragged into a fight for fourth?
No, I don't see it. I mean, it's just a question of who's going to win it out of these three, and the rest is just hoping to get in the fight for the top 4 or 5, right? Because we don't know that. And, if it's 5, then it makes it easier a little bit later for us to chat about, I suppose, the Champions League spots. But here it's going to be decided between these three. With I have to agree, with Manchester City, given their experience, given the fact that everybody's healthy for the most part, the players that matter anyway. They're the favorites right now. But I can't see a scenario where Manchester City won't win the.
You can or you can't.
I can. Yes, I think. Look, I mean, we'll never know. Obviously, I look at the schedule, and some are tougher than others. I look at Manchester City, and I see a spell of United, Liverpool, Brighton away, and Arsenal. And that, if I had to just compare the schedule of Liverpool, for example, it's more forgiven. I do think that with all things being equal, if we get to the Liverpool against Manchester City match, if Liverpool wins that game, I think Liverpool will win the Premier League. Whoever wins, let me put it that way: whoever wins that game, a draw, I think is going to make it more complicated. So leave that out because it's better narrative for us. But I think if Liverpool beat Manchester City in that game, and coming into it, they're still a couple points ahead, or even, within a point or even, I think Liverpool, the momentum, the Jurgen Klopp story, everything else is going to be enough. That's my belief.
Okay, Ryan, you've got Liverpool in third, but they have won the title recently under Jurgen Klopp. Can Arsenal be trusted not to drop stupid points, given that they haven't been over this ground under Mikel Arteta before?
I mean, we've already seen them drop some stupid points, starting with the Aston Villa game, then drawing with Liverpool at Anfield after winning, and then the 2 losses to West Ham at Fulham. But I think since then we've kind of seen that there was really nothing wrong with Arsenal during that stretch. I like the West Ham game; they outshot West Ham 30-5 or something like that, and that was really just one of those games. The Fulham game was a 50-50 game, I think, which you probably don't want to be playing a 50-50 game with Fulham if you're Arsenal. But when you play a 50-50 game, sometimes you win. Most of the time you don't lose. So I think with Arsenal, they've dropped points already, but it's mostly kind of just due to the bounce of the ball. But yeah, I mean, we have seen Liverpool sustain this absurd pace for a full season. It's happened, 3 times, right? They've pushed way above the 90-point pace and kept pace with City and kind of lost 2 titles, not really due to any fault of their own. So we haven't seen it with Arsenal, but I just think Arsenal have been really fantastic. So, can't get into I don't know the emotional fiber of the team as a whole, I guess, because we haven't seen it tested that much, but the quality of their play has been truly fantastic recently.
Okay, let's get on to the race for the top 4. Basically, is it one spot available for all of these teams? Well, according to Janusz and Ryan, yes, because the top 3 in whichever order will finish in that spot. So you've kind of gone with the first 4 as their Premier League positions. Chelsea's an interesting one because you've got them 3 places higher than where they are in the table, and Brighton in 9th. So there's not much movement there. Ryan, was it an easy decision to rank these European Champions League chasers?
Yeah, I don't feel super confident about 4 through 9 here, I would say. I think, as Janusz touched on, I think the top 3 are just so far ahead of the rest of the league, I think, in a way that we really haven't seen in a long time. I think you could make an argument that those are the 3 best teams in Europe. I'm not going to do that right now, but you could make it. Here, if Tottenham play Brighton, do I have a strong lean whether that Tottenham's going to beat Brighton? No, I would not go into that game confidently. But I think, I think just the point totals accrued by Tottenham and Villa make them both very likely to finish 4th and 5th.
And the goal difference as well, Ryan.
Yeah, and the goal difference. Yeah, obviously you see Man U's somehow are in 6th with a even goal difference, which they continue to do this, and I don't understand how they win so many points with barely outscoring their opponents ever. But yeah, I think the theme of this is that, yes, it matches the table, and maybe that's kind of anchored our thinking a little bit. But I think there's not much to pick between these teams if we kind of clean the slate. Let's say everyone had 0 points and we played the final 15 games or so.
Janusz, it's going to be tough for Newcastle. It was announced today that Callum Wilson's probably facing 3 months on the sidelines. Alexander Isak not yet ready to come back. Anthony Gordon probably going to have to start through the middle again. So it's been tough for them with Champions League and not having the biggest squad, having some bad luck with injuries. Out of the full screen that we've just seen and the positions, Manchester United, as Ryan spoke about, with a kind of level goal difference, is there any one of these teams that could go on a run and maybe steal 4th away from either Spurs or Villa? Or do you think it's between Spurs or Villa for that final place in the top 4?
I think it's between Spurs, Villa, and Manchester United. Everything else, as you see it here, I mean, the point difference is impossible. I mean, Newcastle is not going to make that up on the assumption of 4 places. But even with 5, I just don't see how that happens. Chelsea, that's impossible for me as well. And I don't even want to talk about Brighton. I mean, they may make it interesting. In the end, that difference may be much, much smaller, but it's too much. I mean, you're asking these teams like Newcastle and Chelsea, if this is what you're asking, you're asking those teams to run the table. And even then, it may not be enough, right? I mean, it's crazy. It's just a question who falls out right now. Obviously, 5 points of Villa, but I mean, so many worries about Villa. I actually think that if someone is going to drop out of that, even when it's 5, even with 5 points difference in hand for Villa, they're in trouble. I mean, they've been great at home for a time, and now they're starting to lose games at home, not just in the Premier League. I know we're talking here, but in the cup competitions as well. You're talking about 3 center backs with, Tyron Mings and Diego Carlos and Ezri Konsa being out. Boubacar Kamara is out right now. So I know they have a lot going forward, but remember, we've talked about how great it is when you're winning, but Unai Emery can be very uncomfortable manager when things don't go your way. So I worry about Villa, and, they have a 5-point cushion.
So as for the potential 3 to go down, let's have a look at the race to avoid the drop. Now, there's a couple of teams I want to mention. West Ham in the middle section are 8th in the table, but down in 13th in Ryan and Bill's re-ranking the Premier League, which I think is fair. Now, the one team that isn't involved here, which I think should be, is the team that are third bottom right now of the actual table, Everton, but they do not feature at all in this. They're 10th in your rankings, and that's down 4. You had them in 6th last time. What was the reasoning behind that? And are we going to see them drop 8 places next time when you kind of realize, ooh, this is a bit of an issue here, Ryan?
What did Everton do to hurt you? That's what
Nothing.
I want.
Everton's positioning up in 6th the last time out was the one that I found incredulous.
It was a mistake, Ryan, right? I mean, it's impossible you could have thought that way.
I think at that point of the season, there was
just joking. They were good, yeah.
The outside of the top 5, it was very muddled. I think we forget at that point in the season. And I think with Everton now, it's actually a really easy answer to your question, Mark. They had a 10-point deduction. If they just had the points that they actually earned this season in terms of their performance, they'd be in 12th. And so I'm just saying they're in 12th points wise. I think they've been a little unfortunate in some of their games. They're only -1 if you look at non-penalty goal difference. So yeah, they would not be even close to the relegation battle if they just had all of their points. So I don't think we can, these are rankings of the team's quality going forward, right? So we're not, the fact that they're being penalized by the Premier League for violating financial rules says nothing about the actual quality of the team in a vacuum.
So if I was to take your credit card and spend loads of money on presents for Janusz and me, it wouldn't really matter because it doesn't matter about the cash at all as far as what you do with this league table as well. Are you willing to allow us your credit card to go and splash?
I can barely understand the metaphor that you're making here.
Money doesn't matter. So you can spend what you want. Well, and if you got a 10-point deduction, it doesn't matter because you'll still be mid-table in Ryan and Bill's reassessed league table.
Well, but we're not, it wouldn't be very fun if we just did a piece where we were like, these are the 20 best teams, and it just matched the Premier League table exactly. That you guys would not have me on the show to talk about it. We're just like ranking the actual quality of the team going forward, right? We think basically on a neutral field, if these teams played each other over the next 2 weeks, this is where they would be favored. And Everton would not be a bottom 3 team in that kind of ranking. I think if you looked at the betting markets, if they played Luton, they would be favored to beat them on a neutral field relatively.
Yes, Ryan. Yes and no. The 10 points, but based on quality. Okay, they had a good run. Many teams during the season have good runs, right? This Everton team, and this is, the points were taken away a long time ago, and they went on a great run to get away from it, right? And here we are, we're looking at 3 draws and 2 losses in the last couple of games. We're looking at a team that's been tinkering with relegation for how many seasons now, right? Okay, I get you the 10 points. If Liverpool didn't lose to Arsenal, oh well, they would have been maybe, a few points ahead. So I get what you're saying, but I think realistically, we're looking at a team that, we can sit here and say, Sean Dyche, we like, his energy, this, that, or the other. They have the sort of players that you think they shouldn't be there. But we've been saying that for a long time. They're in real trouble. I think they deserve to be even lower because one decent run doesn't change the season. The 10 points, I get it, but it's not the fault of the players. But again, I'm looking at Everton, who for the last 3 seasons, it's a great escape every time. Points taken away or not. And that quality of the team has been better than, most teams in the last part of the 3 seasons. That's why I would put him out there. And I genuinely worry about them.
I think your argument is very good, Ryan. And unfortunately for us, when we go fishing, you don't tend to bite. You're not a Stevie Nicol or one of the others where you just go like that. You've done all right. So I appreciate that. The one question I want for both of you before we move on to preview Manchester City against Chelsea, the big game this weekend, Saturday, 12:30 Eastern. The top, we've discussed. The European spots, we've discussed. The bottom 3, the 3 teams that go down. Now, I know we've discussed Everton, but I think you're right. Luton, Burnley, Sheffield United, okay? Those 3 teams have just come up. Janusz, which one of them, from what you've seen recently, has the best chance of not being in the bottom 3? And bearing in mind, Luton are not in the bottom 3 right now because Everton are. But in Ryan and Bill's re-ranking the Premier League, Luton are. So who's most likely to get themselves out and extricate themselves from that position, Janusz?
I mean, I don't want to complicate things. I had those three going down before the season, but I mean, if I look at the point, Burnley and Sheffield United, I mean, how do I make a case with 7 points? So, I mean, 8 points. I just can't, logically, I can't make that case. I don't see any indication. I mean, okay, Sheffield, what I would say is that Luton has been showing signs, but then lose to Sheffield United, was it at home, right? I mean, that tells you everything. So Forest, I like this because I would have had the same exact way, regardless of criteria that Ryan has, right? Because it's a little bit different than that of mine, just kind of analyzing the teams as they are. But I think I would have, because Forest, I worry, Nuno Espirito Santo came in, first couple games was okay, and now, back to the pretty much to the same. But I do think that they have more quality than Luton, for example. I mean, different way. Obviously, we know that Luton can hurt you with that direct style, big team, big physical, and all that. So, of course, Luton can get out, and I could see Forest dropping off. But as it stands right now, I'm sticking with Ryan and what we just saw.
I have to say, Ryan, the only gripe that I certainly have, and Janusz has to a degree, is Everton. So to have only 1 out of 20 that we kind of have a disagreement about, I think this is a pretty fair re-ranking of the Premier League for you and Bill this time.
To me, that I feel like we're doing something wrong. We gotta annoy you guys a little more next time.
Everton top 6 next time. Okay, Manchester City against Chelsea. Before we speak about the game, there's someone going back to the Etihad for the first time since he left to join Chelsea, and he was the player that scored a penalty in stoppage time in a brilliant 4-4 game back in November. His name's Cole Palmer, and both Pep Guardiola and Mauricio Pochettino have been speaking about his return this weekend.
Return to the Etihad for Cole. Do you think he's got something to prove?
No, he's not this type of player that need to prove nothing. I think he really, is very grateful with his period in Manchester City, and he left the club because he wanted to find, another challenge or to have the possibility to play more. And yes, here was he adapted very well, and he was lucky because he's playing a lot of games here. No, but I think he's going to be there, trying to play and to perform for him and for his team. Do you
think Pep Guardiola regrets selling him?
No, that is a question for him. Look, for me, Manchester City have an amazing squad, unbelievable player, and of course, the decision, I think, is not regret or no regret. Like sometimes we make some decision that always we think in the best for the team. That doesn't mean that it's good or not so good player. It's about that sometimes the period or the circumstance didn't match, and that situation can happen. Player want to leave, and you cannot stop because you cannot provide the game time. It's unfair to say that they are going to regret, or it's unfair that they cannot give the chance, because Manchester City is doing really well. It's one of the best teams on the world, and it's not easy to find the space to play for a young guy.
I didn't have any doubts about his quality. A part of the stats, the way he's playing is a star player, so he's already an exceptional player. So he traveled, or he moved on to got the minutes that he has, and it just was question of time, and he showed his immense quality.
Janusz, it was probably the right move because there's no chance that Cole Palmer would have had the same opportunities at Manchester City that he's had at Chelsea. And you have to be fair to Pep Guardiola. There's very few players during his time at Manchester City, when he's deemed them surplus to requirements for whatever reason, Gabriel Jesus, Riyad Mahrez has obviously gone to Saudi Arabia, he's let them go. He hasn't got this one wrong, has he?
No, and he, that's why it was the right move, because I don't know if he was good enough. The flip side of it is, if Pep Guardiola thinks you're great, he would have probably kept him, right? Remember Phil Foden? For how long everybody was saying he's wasting his time over there. What does that mean for England? He needs to go on loan here, there. And Pep Guardiola just said, stay patient. Your time will come. Look what's happening with Phil Foden. And by the way, how long has it taken for him to be a starting player just about every game, or even in the biggest games, right? This is, you almost want to say a breakout season for him. Not that the other seasons weren't good when he was coming in. So I think if Pep Guardiola felt Palmer was that sort of a player, I think he would have gone way out of his way to reassure him that, listen, stay patient, look at Phil Foden, and you'll get there. So a little bit of both. Of course, we'll never know exactly what happened in those conversations. I think the decision looks right because what's he got? 10 goals in the Premier League, 6 assists, 13 goals, I think, on the season at the age of 21. He certainly is an important player for Chelsea, but it makes you wonder if he stayed. And if you look at Foden, maybe that would have been a better option. I wouldn't leave at that age Manchester City unless Pep Guardiola told me to do so.
21 years old, Ryan, and we've seen him play in a more withdrawn position behind the striker. We've seen him play through the middle for Chelsea as well. I know they've got Nkunku and they've got Nicholas Jackson, but he's kind of been the focal point of the attack in a number of games. Where do you think Cole Palmer's best position is, Ryan?
Yeah, like if we were having this discussion 12 years ago, he would just be like a 10 playing behind a striker. That position doesn't really exist in modern soccer, which I think is kind of the conundrum maybe of Cole Palmer going forward. I think to me, he reminds me most of he does. It's interesting. Janusz brought up Phil Foden. I think they're pretty similar players, but Phil Foden is just a lot more dynamic, better athlete. He reminds me a lot of like James Maddison or Paulo Dybala, someone like that. So I think, I don't know, going forward, I feel like it's interesting because he is a flexible player, which is nice as you're kind of building a team like Chelsea are theoretically trying to do. So he can kind of play in a number of different roles. I think probably I feel like I see him ultimately being like sort of a free 8, the more kind of advanced midfielder in a midfield 3. Like that seems like the most likely outcome.
For me, he's Martin Odegaard of Chelsea. The systems are maybe slightly different. I think that Pochettino needs to get there. He has in like a 4-3-3 where you play him on the right hand side and give him a freedom to go. Right, he can be protected. Obviously, by Enzo and Caicedo, whoever's going to be playing there. But we've seen him try as a false 9, at kind of 2 strikers, and although he can play there. And even in wider in the front 3, it looked that way that he was tried there as well. But I think he needs to be like Odegaard. He reminds me a little bit of him. He's not as intelligent just yet. I think he's still a little bit about himself. I get a sense a little bit where Odegaard's looking to thread that beautiful pass. I think Cole Palmer, it's still I kind of want to say selfish, and not that it's bad because, obviously we've mentioned his statistics, but I think he needs to understand that his best quality is perhaps to find others. And at this moment, it's the most important quality because Chelsea do continue still to struggle in terms of goals, right? Maybe it's a little bit better than it was. But I think if you Pochettino, I'd be sitting him down and saying, look, you have the vision, you have that quality, you have that magic left foot, you can reverse that pass, you can play the cross to the far post, which by the way he does, but his decision making sometimes is not there yet, and perhaps it's the age. He's only 21, as you said, Mark.
So if I go back exactly a decade, 10 years from this date, I'll find only 2 Chelsea wins at the Etihad. Now, it's the reverse fixture from mid-November. It was a brilliant game. It was 4-4. It could have been anything. Cole Palmer had the guts to stand up and dispatch the ball into the back of the net for the penalty to get Chelsea a point. Janusz, I noticed from that game that City went with a 3-2-4-1. More recently, they've kind of played a 4-1-4-1 or a 4-2-3-1. Obviously, there's flexibility for the fullbacks to get forward, and it's just a number. But do you prefer them with a flat 4 with the 2 fullbacks kind of going up and down the line or inside, or do you prefer what they had back then?
Well, I think as we've seen from Pep Guardiola, it depends on the game. I told you this is one team that I no longer need to know what the lineup is ahead of it, right? Every game, no matter where it is, I look, okay, let's see if there are any surprises. Let's see if there's any injuries. Let's see this, that, or the other. I don't do that with Manchester City. It doesn't really matter. It will matter now at business at the end of the season. In this particular game, I think I don't think against Chelsea, when I look at their setup, and it's pretty transparent the way they're going to play, you're going to continue to see I mean, really 3 with one of the fullbacks coming inside. I think against Chelsea, that's going to be even more important because, I mean, I don't want to say there is a little bit of strength there, but I think you want to overwhelm Chelsea there. I think it's one of those games where, let's be honest here. I mean, I worry immensely about Chelsea. If you watch the Crystal Palace game, I mean, Crystal Palace, as bad and chaotic as they were, it almost seemed in that game that Palace could have scored at any given moment. And Chelsea in defensive transition continues to be incredibly bad. So I only see one outcome here, and that's Manchester City running all over Chelsea.
Okay. Before we get on to Kylian Mbappe, just one final word about this game, Manchester City against Chelsea. Ryan, back-to-back 3-1 wins away from home at Villa and at Palace. And before that, a 4-2 loss at home to Wolves. Which Chelsea are you expecting to show up at the Etihad on Saturday?
I think we're going to see a team like the one that got absolutely annihilated by Liverpool at Anfield a couple weeks ago. We should say a very undermanned Liverpool team too that day, while City, Haaland and De Bruyne will both be playing in this game. They're flying. There have been some weird Chelsea City games recently, obviously the 4-4, but I feel like most of those weird games have happened at Stamford Bridge. So yeah, I have very little hope for Chelsea this weekend.
Okay. Prediction time. Scores, Janusz. What do you reckon?
I'm going to go 3-1 to Manchester City.
Okay.
Almost tempted to go like 4-1, but, somewhere there.
But now we're at that stage where the opposition usually get a goal against City, even though they don't have much of the ball. It's a quirk this season, but City usually get 3 or 4. Ryan, what do you think?
I'm going to say 2-0, and I'll even give you, I think Chelsea will have 3 total shots in the game.
This is, by the way, just very quickly. I'm going to be looking at Cole Palmer. Not that it's going to define him in any way, but if you remember in that game against Liverpool, I mean, it was a man against boys. I mean, he was non-existent in that game whatsoever, and I think he's good enough.
Until the end.
We can't put but we can't put it just on him to do that. But I think for him to hold the possession, to maybe initiate a counter, I think he's going to have to be important.
Oh, the Liverpool game, yeah. He was great right at the end against Crystal Palace, but yeah, against Liverpool, he wasn't great. So he's going to have a big part. But the Chelsea defence is as well. It hasn't been great. That's the big one this weekend, Manchester City against Chelsea. Full reaction right here on the ESPN FC social media channels. Okay, we're going to end with Kylian Mbappe, who's not quite said his farewells yet, his adieu and au revoir, but he will be at the end of the season when his contract expires. So, is it the most obvious move that everybody kind of knows about, but it's just not been confirmed yet, and he heads to Real Madrid? So I did a little bit of looking at the odds, 1 to 6. If you put $6, £6, 6 whatever on, you'll get 1 back plus your stake. There's not money to be made here, but there might be some value elsewhere. And I'm going to give you the odds after we hear from a certain manager by the name of Mikel Arteta. Arsenal are 10 to 1 to sign Kylian Mbappe, but is he interested?
Well, when there is a player of that caliber, we always have to be in the conversation. But as you said, it looks in a different way. That's what I would say.
Are you in the conversation?
I'm not. Maybe Edu and the owners have, but I'm not in those conversations till the last stage.
I guess the question is more, should you be? Like, why not?
Exactly. Why not? If we want to be the best team, we're gonna need the best talent and the best players. That's for sure. The club that we are, I don't think that that's ever been an issue. Everybody wants to play for Arsenal. At least the players that we always discuss, they always had that smile in their faces the moment that you open the door and start to have that discussion, and that's because of our history and everything that we've done in the past as well.
Janusz, I really like that answer, or those answers, from Mikel Arteta. So often you get, he's not our player, don't want to speak about it. He's like, well, why shouldn't we be in the conversation? I think there might have to come a time over the next 2 or 3 years. Arsenal are at a level right now, they're not far away, but I don't think they'll get to where they want to be without a world-class talent. How do they persuade Kylian Mbappe not to go to Real Madrid, where his pal Tchouaméni and
Wait a second. My friend, I mean, Arteta's picking. I was saying that you have to be in a conversation when there was Liverpool. I mean, Jurgen Klopp leaving. My conspiracy theory goes out the window. However, if he was staying, I think Liverpool would have had a better chance of getting Mbappe than Arteta. But I mean, our Jules here on ESPN had said 2 or 3 weeks ago that he's going to Real Madrid. I don't know why we're having this conversation. Could be a pile of gold in front of him, and he's not going to Arsenal. But yes, I'm with you here that big clubs need to be in conversations for big players. But I think this was decided. I think when Kylian Mbappe was like 12 years old or something like that. So it's been a while. So it's taken him a while to get where he's going to get. Arsenal will be getting players. They have rich ownership. The FFP, I think they're nowhere near close to that. They're building in a different way with young players, but as we know, to win the biggest trophies, you need to have a sprinkle of world-class players, some of them experience, and I think we're going to see that from Arsenal. It's just not going to be Kylian Mbappe.
Ryan, I suppose this is like looking at a horse race where you've got the favourite who's never been beaten against 3 horses that do milk rounds every morning. You kind of probably know what's going to happen, but you're still looking at the 3 horses that might beat the favourite and think, is it possible for any of them to do something? So if it's not Arsenal, and crucially, if it's not Real Madrid, Saudi Arabian team 16-1. The other one, I've got Chelsea, who are still looking for a striker, got a lot of money, but maybe the financial fair play wouldn't allow that. 40-1. Are we silly? Are we just giving money to the bookmakers if we don't put money on him going to Real Madrid?
I think if you can get odds on Everton, I would definitely throw something down there. In the league, why not? Help bring them back to prominence.
What are the odds of Ryan moving Everton to like Champions League spot next time we chat?
They might be
That's what they do. They've got Palace this weekend, so they could easily get 3 points there. So no, it's going to be tough.
I think I would bet those odds before I bet Mbappe going to Saudi Arabia.
It just seems a fait accompli, doesn't it? This one.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's kind of disappointing, right? The way the finances have kind of settled in European soccer, where it's like I think Mbappe makes more than double any other player in Europe right now, and it's like given that the options salary wise are basically take a pay cut and still be the highest paid player in the world at Madrid, get a massive pay raise in Saudi Arabia. And then Arsenal should be an awesome option, right? Like they're the youngest of all the big teams in the world, among the sort of top 5, top 8 teams in the world. But Arsenal have never paid a player anywhere near what they would have to pay Kylian Mbappe salary wise. So yes, they should be in a healthier financial ecosystem. Arsenal and Liverpool would be right in the mix, kind of trying to get Kylian Mbappe. But we've just neither of those teams have ever paid a player what Kylian Mbappe is going to make at Real Madrid. Janis
Hearts don't need him. We've got Lawrence Shankland.
I could see him going there. I hear the weather's nice.
Gorgie. Beautiful. Edinburgh, capital city. Fantastic. I may be commentating on Kylian Mbappe's next team this weekend in just a second. But first, the promo is for Barcelona because they are away from home in Vigo at Balaidos against Celta. That's on Saturday. There's an earlier one as well. Atleti are in action this weekend against Las Palmas. That's the early one on Saturday with myself and Alex Pareja in the United States. Then Celta de Vigo against Barcelona. And then potentially, maybe even probably, Kylian Mbappe's next club on Sunday morning with myself and Alex. They go to Vallecas, just a few miles to the east of the city, to face Rayo Vallecano under new management after Francisco was fired. So plenty talking points today. Everton, yep, that can be parked and revisited next time. But the re-ranking of the Premier League, no real surprises. City, Arsenal and Liverpool, your top 3. Goals expected at the Etihad on Saturday at 12:30 Eastern as Man City face Chelsea. Mbappe probably headed for Real Madrid. And La Liga and the Bundesliga, as always, live on ESPN Plus this weekend. Wherever you're going, if you're going to a game, enjoy it. We will do this all again next week. And a reminder that after the games tomorrow, we'll have full coverage on the ESPN FC social media channels of all the games in the Premier League. Bye for now.